Okay, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to quote from the report from the Chief Electoral Officer following the 40th general election, Part 2.1. It says, the Chief Electoral Officer does not receive any documentary evidence at the expense of the expenses reported in the election expenses return, nor does the Act provide the Chief Electoral Officer with the authority to request that a party provide such evidence. Therefore, he has no means to verify the accuracy of the reported expenses on which the reimbursement is based, end quote. We in the opposition benches voted to give the Chief Electoral that power. The government said no. Why?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party is assisting Elections Canada, and we've already indicated we'll make all documents in this regard available to them. But these exaggerated allegations demean millions of voters who cast legitimate votes in the last election. The opposition paid millions of dollars to make hundreds of thousands of calls, Mr. Speaker. This fact is not in question. But what is in question, and before we continue these baseless smears, they should prove their own callers are not in fact behind these reports, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton Centre.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, but the member needs to know that this has to stop. There's a legitimate, separate question being asked here. The government has an obligation to provide an answer about why they denied the Chief Electoral Officer the power he requested to make sure everybody in here is telling the truth. Now, every province in this country has given that power to their Chief Electoral Officer, but the Government of Canada is refusing to give the federal Chief Electoral Officer these powers. I ask again, defend yourself. Why are you denying the Chief Electoral Officer the right to have these?
I'd like to remind that honourable member as well to address his comments to the chair, not directly at his colleagues. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have no idea why you would do any such thing. But let's be clear. The former Chief Electoral Officer, Jean-Pierre Kingsley, has said that Elections Canada does have all the investigative and ability and authority that they require in this matter. But this is yet another example of exaggerated allegations which demean millions of voters who cast legitimate votes in the last election, Mr. Speaker. What's clear is that the opposition paid millions of dollars to make hundreds of thousands of phone calls. Before continuing these baseless smears, they should prove their own callers are not behind these reports.